The Trip. Chapter 6. Alice. By late morning, the West Village had put on its easy face, bikes cutting quiet diagonals, a florist misting roses like they were on set, a dog walker counting leashes under her breath. Alice crossed Hudson with her phone to her ear and a coffee she wasn't drinking. "Walk me through what you've actually done," she said, stepping around a pallet of seltzer on the curb. On the other end, the founder tried to sound composed and landed somewhere near obedient. Paused socials. Told staff we're handling it. Drafted a note for the community. "Don't send it," Alice said. "Write it if you have to. Don't send it." She turned down a narrow block where the shade sat lower than the street. The city had places like that, cool pockets where decisions made more sense. She stopped outside a brick building with a buzzer that never worked and pushed the door with her shoulder until it admitted her like an old friend. "Two things," she said, taking the stairs. "You will not guess aloud. You will not apologize for anything you can't verify. These are not moral positions. They're survival tactics. There's a difference." Second floor landing, an office that used to be a photographer's studio and still had the bones for it. High windows, scuffed white floor, a faint smell of gaffer tape that never really leaves. Her team was already there, spread around a table better suited to prints than laptops. Someone had taped printouts to the wall, headlines, screenshots, a calendar with certain hours circled like soft threats. Alice sent her bag to the floor with a practiced nudge and didn't sit. "Sometimes the first good sentence is the one you don't say," she told the founder. "You'll get a call from a morning show in 20 minutes. Tell them you're unavailable. If you feel the need to explain, tell them planning." "Planning," he echoed. "Good lad." She ended the call and looked up at the board. "What are we missing?" "Internal tone," said Eva, her strategist. "Half the staff thinks this is HR, half thinks this is betrayal. They're both right in different directions." "Keep it transactional," Alice said. "Time, place, process. Think dental appointment, not manifesto." Eva nodded and began taking words out of a paragraph. A speaker in the corner clicked with the start of a live radio hour, city news in that calm voice that sounds like a blanket. Alice let it run long enough to hear the host say a name that wasn't theirs. Good. Someone else's fire was burning hotter. Her assistant drifted in with a stack of legal pads and a whisper. "Times wants context, not quote." "They always do," Alice said, scanning an email. "Give them temperature. Nothing they can ladle." The door creaked. The client's COO slipped inside, jacket folded over her arm like a shield she'd decided not to use. "I did a draft for staff," she said, handing over a page. Alice read standing, a habit that kept edits short. Lose family. Replace committed to listening with interviews will be conducted by X. Participation is optional. Managers will not attend. People believe nouns. The COO allowed herself a small breath. "You're very certain." "I'm very practiced," Alice said. "Certainty is for the gods." Her phone lit with an incoming call from London. She let it ring once and answered, leaning near the window where the light wasn't too honest. "Mom?" "Hello, love." The voice traveled like it had packed extra care for customs. "He's dozed most of the morning. Woke to ask if you're still cross with the BBC." Alice almost smiled. "Perpetually. He'll be glad. Will you call later?" "In a few hours." "I know you don't work on their time," her mother said, gentle as warning. "I don't work on anyone's time," Alice said, softening it with, "Kiss him for me." She hung up and watched a pigeon on the sill. Then she turned back to the room. "The investor call first," she said. "Then staff note at 4:17. Then a fact placed where facts don't feel like theater." She looked at Eva. "Find me a clinical registry page we can point at without pointing." "On it." Alice checked her watch without letting anyone see her check it. The day's middle had arrived early, the way it does when consequence gets a head start. She moved to the whiteboard and drew a line. No headings, no boxes. "What matters between now and 5 is not sounding clever," she said. "It's sounding like you've been here before." The founder reappeared on speaker. "They keep calling from blocked numbers." "Let them," Alice said. "Silence isn't guilt. It's the only lever we can pull without moving our feet." A pause. "Am I meant to feel better?" "No," she said. "You're meant to feel useful." Eva's laptop pinged. "Investor line is live." Alice put the call on speaker and stayed standing, eyes on the window where the street made a slow pan past a blue van and a woman teaching a child to scooter. "Afternoon," a baritone said, expensively calm. "We'd like to align." "Of course you would," Alice said, dry enough to pass for polite. "You will not post. You will not hint. If asked, you will say the company has engaged an external firm and you'll refer to the COO. If you can't manage that for 24 hours, your money's too nervous for this ride." A cough, a smile somewhere, the sound of someone muting to swear. "Fine," the baritone said. "Good," Alice said, and ended the call without a goodbye. She disliked using words to erase themselves. Her assistant hovered in the doorway, efficient, curious. "The Times wants background." "They always do," Alice said. "Give them temperature." The room worked. Words lost weight. A document shortened. The radio hour shuffled to weather, then sport, then back to the city's little emergencies. At 3, Alice finally sat, not to rest, but to lower the temperature in the air. She drafted the staff note in one pass. Time, method, contact. She left out everything that sounded like comfort. People didn't need comfort from a memo. They needed map coordinates. 417, she said, handing it back. From a roll account, no signatures. The COO read, blinked once, nodded. Right. Alice stood again, smoothed nothing, and went to the window. The sky over the West Village had taken on that late-day shine that makes buildings look hand-washed. On her phone, a thread ticked alive. Same group, different noise today. Camille. A photo of a stairwell light in a museum, captioned, "Edges doing more work than centers." Ethan. 3 words clients overuse this week? Alice. Authentic. Journey aligned. Marcus. Add disruption before Alice confiscates it. Charlotte reacted with a single check mark. Daniel didn't add a message, but the read receipt sat there like a small, steady presence. Alice slid the phone away. 417 waited. The leak had a place to land that wouldn't bruise. The founder had learned briefly to hold his tongue. Her mother would be near the phone when the ward went quiet again. She touched the edge of the whiteboard with a finger as if checking whether the line she'd drawn would hold. It would. And if it didn't, she'd redraw it. That was the job. At 417, the note went out, clean and short, and the room exhaled without letting itself look relieved. Ava watched the delivery report populate like a weather map. Opens in clusters, forwards spiking in operations. One bounce from a retiree whose address no one had removed. Registry page found, Eva said, sliding over a URL on a post-it, not a screen. Quietly public, not sexy. Perfect, Alice said. Let it be discovered by someone who gets a thrill from filing cabinets. At 4:39, the first sources say hit a niche outlet that never pretended to have sources. At 4:51, a reporter with a byline that had won things emailed asking if the company could contextualize the independent review. Alice replied with a sentence that gave nothing teeth. By 5:03, the founder texted a single word, shaking, and then didn't call, which was progress. She left the studio before the light went orange. Hudson Street caught her at the corner and steadied. She cut east, then south, passing a shop selling nothing she needed in ways that made need feel optional. Her phone buzzed against her palm. London again, then a client she decided could wait, then a number she didn't recognize but had the bland confidence of bureaucracy. She answered. A recorded woman began speaking in the voice of systems. For a beat, Alice almost ended the call, spam cadence. But then the phrase landed with bureaucratic understatement. Your case status has been updated. New card is being produced. She stopped on the edge of the curb, one step into the road, then the other back onto the pavement. The message repeated itself as if it didn't understand its own gravity. She stood still until the crosswalk blinked red back to white. She didn't smile, but something in her posture unhooked. She walked on, slower now, until Bar Pizzolino's zinc counter presented itself like an answer. She took a spot at the corner and ordered a small, bitter thing on ice she didn't bother to name. Her phone rested face down on the counter, then face up. She drafted a text to her mother. Looks like I'll bother America a while longer, and saved it without sending. She typed to Eva instead. Training outline for Queens. Block Saturday, 10 o'clock. Keep it an hour. No slides. Eva's reply came back with a thumbs up and a bullet list that already looked useful. Across the room, a couple argued softly about a sofa as if a sofa could save them. A man at the far end read a paperback with a cracked spine as if it were medicine. Alice let the noise file itself into categories. Her screen lit again. Nora Garvey. You don't have to like me to use me. Coffee tomorrow? I'll bring air. Alice lifted her glass and set it down twice. She typed, not tomorrow. Possibly never. She hit send. 3 dots. Nothing. Then, minutes later, sending. Useful brevity. Outside, Grove Street had gone to edges and silhouettes. Alice paid, left a tip that made the bartender blink, and stepped into the evening that New York reserves for people who haven't yet used up the day. On the way home, she ducked into the watch repair on Christopher, a narrow sliver of a place where time is stacked in trays behind glass. The owner, thin, exact, handed her a small tissue-wrapped bundle like it might break. Cleaned and running, he said. Beautiful movement. Her father's old watch, quiet for years. She turned it over and felt the engraving with her thumb, the initials that had taught her about restraint. It ticked like a small, insistent fact. At home, the apartment remembered how to be simple. She placed the watch on the dresser, set her phone beside it, and took the stack of envelopes she'd ignored in the morning down to 1. Utilities, a charity she supported without telling anyone. A small pale card from a real estate broker, a 1-bedroom with windows that pretended to be 2. She tossed it into the recycling, then fished it back out, then tossed it again. Her computer woke the room with soft light. The founder's crisis dashboard had quieted into charts that suggested adulthood. Investors were silent by instruction. The staff's Slack showed a thread of union talk that didn't frighten her. It steadied her. She opened a blank document and wrote a 1-page outline for Saturday's training. How to say one thing well to people who want 10. Bullets, not paragraphs. Role-play prompts. A note to bring biscuits because the only thing harder than organizing tenants is organizing tenants hungry. She stopped when the outline didn't need her anymore. She stood by the window and looked down into a narrow courtyard where someone had strung cafe lights months ago and never turned them on. A neighbor watered a plant with exaggerated care. The water missed the soil and darkened brick. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unassuming Gmail address that most people would have missed. The subject line was polite to a fault. Regarding Thursday's table. 2 sentences. Menu updated. Oysters are back. No speeches this time, please. She laughed once, quietly. Not colony, not planning, just a place that knew the weight of routines. She turned the phone face down and picked up the watch again, wound it, listened. The second hand moved in measured insistence. Not performance. Practice. Her mother would be at the hospital soon. The ward would go to its evening quiet that isn't quiet. Alice typed the text she wasn't sure how to send. Paperwork says I get to stay. I'll call in an hour. She deleted paperwork says, sent the rest. At the door, she hesitated, then pulled a garment bag from the back of the wardrobe and laid it across the bed. A dress she never wore to work because work didn't deserve it. She wasn't planning a performance, just marking a different kind of timing. The city shifted outside as if someone had turned the surface down a notch. She put the watch on, felt the weight settle against her wrist like a decision she'd finally stopped arguing with and let the apartment dim around her on purpose. Tomorrow would have its calls. Tonight had a tick she trusted. And somewhere between the two, the booth would sit in the dark, holding its shape, as if waiting were a skill. Night slid in without ceremony. Rain threatened, didn't bother. Alice took the long way home on streets that knew her shoes, Barrow to Bedford, then the narrow slash of Grove where the brick-holed sound close. She called London from the stoop outside her building so the hallway wouldn't shape her voice. "Mum, quick one." "You've caught me at tea," her mother said, pleased anyway. "He's awake. Do you want—" A thin shuffle, then her father's breath, then his careful voice, the kind that arrives like an old record, finally clean. "Is the BBC still wrong, Alice?" "Deeply," she said, letting the smile ride the word. "And I get to be here to be annoyed about it." "Good," he said, and the line cracked in a way that made the single syllable feel full. She handed him back without music. Her mother's exhale wrapped the call. "I knew you'd sort it," she said. "You always do." "Sometimes I just wait politely and the door opens," Alice said. "I'll ring tomorrow." Kiss him twice. She climbed, let herself in, and set her phone beside the small, ticking watch. The notification from earlier, the bureaucracy's flat proclamation about a card, sat on the lock screen like a new piece of furniture you hadn't decided how to use. She didn't frame it. She let it exist. On the table, the manila folder marked Queen's Saturday. She slid in a short stack of handouts, questions for recalcitrant landlords, sentences that refused to be bait. She added a packet of biscuits because organization always goes better with sugar, and because Eva would forget to eat. A call flashed with no name, UK number, then rolled to voicemail before she could catch it. She pressed play. "It's Ria. I'm in New York next week. I signed the thing." Alice didn't need more. The thing was what they'd always called the deed they'd argued over at that narrow table in Clerkenwell. Half personal, half professional, all consequences. Not marriage. Ria would have said papers. Not a deal. She'd have said terms. The deed. Finally signed. She didn't replay it. She wrote nothing down. She stood very still until her posture arranged itself around the news without her help. The laptop chimed. An email from the restaurant, no logo, no sales voice. Subject line, "Corner is yours." 2 lines. Noise low, as requested. Staff knows to keep the second bottle out of sight unless asked. She smiled without showing teeth. Stabilizing a room was a kind of work. She did it where it counted. A second email from Nora Garvey. "Temperature around your universe is dropping for the weekend. Monday wants a headline. If you like leverage, use quiet. No pitch attached for once." She filed the sentence in the cabinet in her head and gave nothing back. She tried the dress on for 6 seconds. It did what good clothes do. Didn't insist. She hung it again. The watch stayed. She is not a person who announces. She is a person who arrives. The rain finally committed. The city lowered its volume 1 notch, the way it does when water edits the night. She texted Eva, "Bring Sharpies Saturday. Chair layout in a horseshoe. First row for the quiet ones." A heart came back, then biscuits, as if she could read the folder through the air. Near midnight, Alice printed a single sheet, a list of phrases that don't escalate. She slipped it into her bag beside lipstick she almost never wore. The voicemail sat in the phone like a held breath. She let it stay. Some sparks don't need oxygen yet. Dawn came with bakery yeast in the stairwell and sparrows on the fire escape inspecting the day's terms. She locked the apartment, the watch a measured weight against her wrist, the manila folder tucked under her arm. On Christopher Street, a van double-parked without apology. A barista dragged out 2 metal chairs and set them level. Alice adjusted one by a thumb's width without thinking. She walked east, light and rain deciding on each other above her, a small, available silence in her chest. The card would arrive. Queens would get their hour. A corner would be ready. A table is a tool if you make it one,